Okay, everybody, thank you very much for coming. Nice to see all the familiar faces and the new faces. So today, both myself and David are going to be talking about this topic of how to build cohesive work teams. And there are a lot of different tools within this organization, the Entrepreneurs Organization and the Entrepreneurs Organization's Accelerator Program for building teams, for working with teams, for hiring people. And we're going to unpack one or two of those as we go. So what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about, I'm going to share a little bit about my entrepreneurial journey with EO Accelerator. We're going to talk about human capital, one of the things that I'm quite passionate about. We were talking about it now because of how many times I've got it wrong, which is hiring the wrong people and the cost of hiring the wrong people. And then we're going to deep dive into one of the tools, a tool called top grading, and that'll give you a sense of some of the stuff that's available within the EO Accelerator program. So just to get a little bit of a sense from people, we started to have a chat. Are you running your own businesses? Are you running organizations? Are you responsible for hiring people? Are you responsible for managing people? Maybe just give me a little bit of a sense. So maybe I can start with you, Hemant.
Hi, my name is Hemant Bhatia, and I do have a group of companies in Bahrain in different fields of manufacturing, industrial trading, and mechanical engineering. Yes, some of those do apply to us, but we do have an HR team who's responsible for managing, hiring, filtering all sorts of people who come into the organization, and I do play a small role in selecting those groups.
Cool, great. Thank you. You want to tell us who you are?
Hi, my name is Abbas Asma. My startup is about Arab content, digital Arab content. And yes, I have a team of 5 people, and I would like to know more how to manage that.
Cool. Okay, good. So just to give you a little bit of a sense of my story, I joined the EO Accelerator program in 2015, 2016 with a business that had about $300,000 in revenue. I don't know if you guys know the EO Accelerator program, but you start, if you can get in if you've done $250,000 of revenue, and grew that in a year to about 700. The threshold for joining EO is $1 million, which I got to in the next year. And then I had a very tough year last year in 2018. 2018 was a year to say goodbye to. And 2019, I've redeveloped the whole model. The business that I run is I connect startups to investors and I connect startups to enterprise. And part of what happened over here was that it was a very tough journey learning how to manage lots of different people. And I've evolved my model to working with as few people as possible because of how challenging it is to get that mix right and to try to kind of put some of that HR piece on the outside. The Accelerator program looks at a couple of different parts of what it takes to run a business. There are 3 main pieces of the Accelerator program, and there's a curriculum, there's a thing called accountability groups where you work with other people, other peers who are going through the process to kind of hold each other to account and grow your business, and then there's a mentorship piece, and we're going to be talking about one of the pieces of the content. So that content piece, there are 4 pieces of it, which is get the people right. If you can get the people right, your next piece is get your strategy right with the right people, with the right brains around the table. Get the strategy right, with the right strategy, run the business well, execute well, make more money, and start the flywheel again. And we're obviously going to focus on this first piece. I think the story that I wanted to share about was just this journey of going in the process of hiring people and then understanding how expensive it was to hire the wrong people. I don't know how many times that's happened to you when you dive into a process or you get people in a system and they say it costs at least 15 times what that person's salary is to hire the wrong person. My experience is that it can be even more depending on the industry and depending on the expertise. I would say 15 to 25 times the cost. So, and I think in the hiring process, I think there's such a challenge to getting objective. I assume all of you have been through some of this hiring process. You're running a business, you've got a gap, you know you need to fill it with somebody, you meet somebody, and you project onto them all of the competence to be able to do that thing. You're like, I've met you, you've told me 5 things, I'm sure you can go and do this job. that I need to get done. And that process of taking a longer time, making sure you get that step right, and rather leaving a space empty, rather having to pick up more slack and putting more pressure on the rest of the team than having to fill the space with the wrong person, because the cost isn't just, the cost is the time it took you to recruit that person, the time it took you to sit in the interviews with that person, the cost of going through a recruiter, the time cost, having to replace the person, and when you recruit the wrong person, they also have an impact on all the other people in the team. It's really hard to quantify just how big that damage can be if you put the wrong person in the team. An example of organizations that understand this, for example, so Zappos, one of the leaders in the world in quality of service to their customers, they have a policy that they have this test driving process, that when somebody comes in, they test drive a new employee for a month. And in the first month, after you've been hired by Zappos, if you'd like to leave, they'll pay you $3,000 to leave in the first month. Because they understand how expensive it is for you really to, if you're the wrong person and it's not going to work, rather leave. And both of us can test that process out at the beginning. That's how much they invest in creating this buffer to make sure they've got the right people. Amazon learned from this, and in certain departments in their business, they've got a process where within the first year, if you want to leave, they'll pay you $2,000 to leave. And they'll add another $1,000 to that until it gets to $5,000. And the idea is that they want people to really be committed to being in that business. If you're an employee of Amazon in that department and it's not working for you, you can take $5,000 and leave anytime. That's how much they understand the value of the human capital. And I think the key thing here is that it depends on the stage of the business. You're building a startup, you've got 5 people in your business. You said something similar, that you've got this. You don't need people who are going to do their job. You need people who are going to do much more than their job. If they're just going to do their job, you're just going to be in the same place. Which brings me to another point, one of the other key learnings, that the process of understanding who you are, firstly, and how you're driving the business, and separating the ego from that process. I think one of the key things that I always refer to or think about is this idea that A's hire A pluses and B's hire C's. So people who are excellent and know how good they are very happy to hire people who are better than them. People who are not so good and are threatened by that process will hire people less good than them to make themselves feel better about that. And the accelerator program is very focused on this idea of scaling, of growing exponentially, of 10xing what you're doing, of 3, 4, 5xing while you're growing and getting to 100x of where you are today at some point in the future. And in order to do that, you have to have the very best people. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to David to talk through one of the tools, and of which there are 32 in the accelerator program. We can talk a little bit more at the end about the accelerator program if you'd like to know about it. And I'm going to hand over to David to talk about the top grading process.
Thank you, Yuda. Now, should I grab that mic so that it goes on the camera? So just excuse us, we're doing like a backstage Beyonce style, super fast changeover. Sorry about that, we just found out we were becoming filmed, so that was very exciting. So, has anyone actually heard of top grading before? As you can see, there's a trademark on it, which means it's big in the United States. So, has anyone heard of the process of top grading before? It's a process whereby the company GE brought in an expert called Brad Smart. And Brad was tasked with analysing all of the employment data through that entire organisation and trying to figure out how GE could be better at hiring people, and also once the person was hired, that GE could be much better at managing their entire work team to figure out who were the A players, the very best players, who were the B players, can we get those B players and can we turn them into A players, or do we just like take them at the back and just kind of kick them out? And then the C players, the people that are pulling down the culture or pulling down the productivity, being able to very quickly identify which people couldn't be helped by the systems, and just getting them out of the organisation. So in this process, Brad Smart and his team figured out that there were a few key steps. The first key step was to conduct a talent review. So rather than worrying about the new people you're going to hire, being very clear about the people that you currently have on your team, how good are they? And do we want to keep those people, or are we looking to replace them? Or are we looking to train the people that we have to make them better in our organisation? The second step is to develop scorecards for every role. One of the things that they found in organisation after organisation, once they started figuring out this top grading process, was that the number one factor that was causing performance to be poor was not the human being, it was that the organisation wasn't clear enough with every individual how they were supposed to add value to their team, to the organisation, and then to the stakeholders and the clients. And so they created this process called scorecarding to allow every individual in an organisation to actually understand what's absolutely critical about what I'm doing in my role right now, and how can I demonstrate that in a metric-driven way. So I can demonstrate my own value to my peers, so I can feel proud of what I do, and so that I can understand how I'm contributing to the whole of what goes on in the organisation. So then once that was figured out, then there was the opportunity to act on the existing C players in the organisation. So getting clear about who in the organisation is really detracting from the organisation. Getting clear very quickly about who those people are, and just moving those people out of the organisation. That one step alone, figuring out who the C players are, and finding a process for moving them out of the organisation on an ongoing basis, that can account for up to 50% of the productivity increase. And it's the simplest part of the process. It's also the least pleasant part of the process, because C players are constantly being pushed out of organisations. And so they learn how to make a fuss, if that makes sense. They learn how to try and stick to people, so people don't want them to leave because they like them, even though they're not productive or they're not good for the culture. And also when they are getting pushed away, they sense that because they're constantly being pushed out of organisations. And so it's not pleasant, but it's actually not functionally very difficult to do. Then once we've got rid of the C players, then we want to bring in A players. And so the process that they talked about for that was a 4-step interview process, which allows us to very quickly weed out the people that are not a great match for our organisation, and then progressively figure out who the really best players are to bring onto our team. So I just wanted to show you a little bit of a model. Oh, there we go. Hidden in plain sight. That you can use to think about the players in your team, to figure out who in my team is an A player, B player, and C player. And then we can have a little conversation about, once I've figured that out, what to do about this. Now, the first thing I'm hoping that I can get you to think about is, what is a team that I can be thinking about in my world that I could apply this to? So, who in this group has a team at work? Even if they're not the boss, they have a team. So, for the purpose of this exercise, you could be thinking about your team at work. If you don't have a team at work, then you could be thinking about, has anyone ever played a sport or worked in a part of a volunteer team or anything like that? So we all work in teams. So for the purpose of this exercise, to learn how this device works, you could be thinking about any team. But I would like you to have a specific team in mind, and for you to think about, what are the names of the people in that team? So you're actually thinking about real people. So who's got a team that they can think about? Would you be willing to share the team you're keeping in mind?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Didi. I'm running a Refugees Forward incubator in Amsterdam and Rotterdam. We are an incubator for innovative and ambitious people with a refugee background that want to refine entrepreneurship in their new country. I have a team of 8 people, way too many people for what we were supposed to be doing. So that's a big issue. And basically, I am the managing director. Then we have 2 people leading the program, one in Amsterdam and one in Rotterdam. Then we have several people that are flying around as well, that are basically supposed to support entrepreneurs in our program. or one person is more detached from it, she's focused on marketing.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So this is a really great example of a team. You've got it very, very clear. This is my team and these are the people. So do people kind of understand what I'm asking for you to keep in mind? Who else would like to share?
Help the performance management, the KPIs in practice.
Sorry.
Hi, my name is Zubair. I come from India. I'm in the travel industry. We work with the corporates for the conferences and events, and also we have another side that we consult for hotels and resorts, strategic planning, operations management, L&D, and all that. Well, we have a team size of 27, so we found people kind of not motivated, obviously, for different reasons, because especially considering the startup, we find a lot of things out of place. So after the first year, we put in the KPIs just as a test practice, and then obviously we had to redesign things, and we built some incentives plans and all those things will work. And we could see a tremendous change after 1 year. Even the people we thought were not really potentially productive kind of turned out to be, because they needed something, a motivating factor. So we could actually segregate the people who would fall into the A category players, and obviously we promoted them, and then that was a tremendous change. We could find it in a year time.
Wow, great. So you've already used this style of thing in your organisation and had some success. Great, excellent, wonderful. So this is very important. In order for this session to be of value, if you don't have a team, a specific team in mind, this will just be another session that you wandered into and then you wandered out, and it will go out of your head. But this is an opportunity to engage with a tool so that when in your life this can be useful for you, if you engage in the thought process, this will come back to you, because this is an incredibly simple model and your subconscious will bring it back. So please do have a team in mind and be thinking about the specific individuals in that team. Now, I want to explain how the model works. There are two parts of the model that we're thinking about. The first, along here, is productivity. So we're saying, is the person that I'm thinking about, are they a low productivity person or are they a high productivity person? And this is, for the thought exercise, it's not a precise science, but you can have, if people have got KPIs and metrics, you can figure out quite clearly the level of performance of people. And the other side is how well they fit the values of the company. And once again, this is for the thought exercise, it's just to have a bit of a play to think, is this person a really good match for our core values, or is this person not actually they're a nice person, but they're not a great match for the core values. And once again, this can be done in quite a tangible way. If your core values are clear, then you can ask yourself specific questions about, do I see this person behaving in these sorts of ways of understanding what the core values look like in your organization. So this is how the system works, is that we can map every person in the team in terms of high match of core values or low match of core values, and high productivity or low productivity. And that creates for us a map of where players sit on the team. So who can guess what we're looking for in every team member? This should be clear. What do we want? Yeah, we want them to be up here. We want high core values, high productivity. They're our best players. So people that fall into that quadrant are called A players. They're our best players on our team. Now, we've also, then the next level is someone who has lower productivity. Their productivity is not as high as we would like, but they're a really great match for the organisation. And so this is really important, is that someone who's in that B player category, if they can generate better productivity, then they're an A player, which is what we want. Then we have what's called here a BC player. Sorry about the feedback. A BC player. This is someone who's very productive in the organisation, but they also cause damage because they have not a good match for the core values. So they might be a great person, but they don't match the culture of the organisation or the culture as you see it emerging. And so this can also happen when you've got people that are coming into have been in the organisation for a long time, and the culture of the organisation has shifted, and this person doesn't want it to change as well. And finally, we've got C players, someone who's low core values and low productivity. So do people understand how the model works? So what I'm going to give you now is 5 minutes to actually have a think about this and to ask yourself, for the people in my team, can I actually map and actually see that not everyone is an A player or not everyone is a B player, and actually have a think about that. So I wanted to just give you a couple of minutes to actually take the time, and we're going to come around and we're actually going to talk to you one-to-one about this process. So 5 minutes to have a think about that. And then after that, we're going to have a discussion about what we found as a wider group. Is everyone okay with that? It's really important for us in Entrepreneurs Organisation, just sitting and listening, that doesn't help you grow. That doesn't help you feel your best potential. But when we actually think about and do an exercise, then we can grow as a human being. So we want to give you at least 5 minutes to have a go at that. So please stick around, and if you've got any questions about the process, then we're both here and we'd love to answer your questions. So I'll come back on the mic in 5 minutes, okay? So go. Hey, how you doing? Does the process make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
What if
Which one is it for here?
Sorry?
Which one is it for here again?
This is
A,
yeah.
B.
So this is the A players, B players. This is also B players, and this is C players.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why you have two Bs?
Because this person you want to try and increase their productivity,
okay.
and this person you want to try and increase their core values.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Good question.
what if the team you're thinking about doesn't have any A players?
That's okay. Yeah. B players can be moved to A players, and you get rid of the C players, and then you hire in new A players.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Great question. No worries. How you doing?
Already did it while you were talking.
Yeah, you did it?
Yeah,
Did you find anything interesting?
Members.
Yeah. Did you find anything interesting?
Actually, I keep telling to one of my colleagues that she's an A player and
Yeah.
a team leader.
Yeah.
And she's very frustrated because people that have values are not as productive as her
Yeah.
times. And I keep telling her, like, but these are the average people.
Yeah.
Not everybody's a A.
Not everyone's an A player.
So I'll take a closer picture of this and talk to her when I get back.
Cool. Would you be willing to share that with the group later when we have the discussion? I'd love to hear some people speak up about what they got. That's awesome. Thank you. Did you have any questions or anything you
I
found?
have a question. So
Yeah.
I've done this exercise before.
Yeah.
And I would say I have 40 or 50% of my team are in B and C.
Yeah.
So I know I have to apply mentorship behaviors to get them into A,
Yeah.
right? But يعني, how many B's should I have? Like, is it, like I have, let's say 30% A, 30% C,
Yeah.
and 40% BC.
Yep.
Is
So
that like a,
that's not a problem.
Yeah.
We're going to go straight after this. I'm going to go through what to do about people in the different quadrants.
okay, cool.
So for me, it's not about how many B players I have. It's how long I'm letting them stick around when they're not improving. So for me, in my companies now, I've got 5 companies active at the moment. It's 3 months.
Yeah.
And if after 3 months, our systems and our processes for allowing people to change their behavior for core values or to retrain and reskill, if after 90 days we don't see
Yeah.
a good change,
Yeah.
then we let that person go.
But do you explain to them, like, we're now assessing you
Absolutely.
based on the values, so for the next 3 months, if you're not adopting these values,
Yeah.
then we're going to start to, say, apply warnings or whatever.
I'm from Australia, which has some of the strictest employment laws in the world.
Same-
So we have to
same
be
here, yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very process driven.
Okay.
But as long as we understand the current employment process in our country, we can then work backwards and say, at what point do we need to start doing this? Also, in most countries, it's much easier to dismiss people during their trial period.
Yeah, of
And in
course.
Australia,
Yeah,
that's
same
especially
here,
true.
yeah.
So if you take pity on a person and you let them stay beyond the first 6 months or the first 12 months and you put them on permanent, then this process is too late.
What if you can't find A players, though? So you decide, like, I decide to keep my B and C just because I need people there.
Yeah.
I don't have an option.
And so that's the
also
process. So
fine.
you're hiring in to get better players if you can, and you're mentoring to get better players if you can.
Has to all be done.
But it's not about being perfect.
Yeah. Thanks.
No worries. Great questions.
So I don't know about you, but like my issues are completely different. So we work in a family business.
Oh.
And we're 5.
Yeah.
And then we have a sales team under us. So we're
Yeah.
5 siblings. Well, my dad and our 4 siblings. So I don't know how this really applies to me, and even in your colleagues' earlier
Yeah.
session as well, we were discussing because we are both in family business.
Yeah.
But in my case, we just have our sales team. It's jewelry.
Yeah.
So like it's very like delicate. a lot of these cause issues, like that some of us are maybe a bit more productive than others, but I can't really hold anyone accountable, right? Like, or I can't fire someone or whatever.
You'd think that, but we heard in the Philippines, we heard from the owner of the largest family business in the Philippines. And he talked us through how they do this with their family. It's possible to do.
To do this in the family.
They absolutely.
Among siblings.
Yeah, not four generations, and maybe 100 people work in the business. And so their business has grown to be one of the most powerful businesses in the country because they took the time to take everyone aside in the family and say, if we want to really leave a legacy here, and if we want this business to be something that serves all of us, we need to be able to have robust conversations about performance and what happens around that performance. So it's not easy, but at the same time, that's when we see the big family businesses that are really generating huge performance without cheating, basically, talking to the government or getting unfair deals. The people that do that by merit, which in the Philippines you really do need to do by merit, that's what we see, is that they take these systems like this. And it doesn't, in a family business, it's not so urgent. It's not a change that you need to implement in 3 months. It can be a 5 or 10 year process. In some of the bigger family businesses, it's a generational process. It's 20 years to bring these sorts of things in.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
It's so confusing because
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
How do you gauge people in your team, whether they are high on core values?
So,
What does it comprise of?
first of all, we do a lot of core values training on the way in. So if they're already in the team, there's a kind of a lag period, but new people coming in, explaining to them what core value behaviours look like. So for me, I don't care so much about what the core values are. I care about what's the behaviour that I see a person who's matching that core value. What's the sort of behaviours that I see?
For example?
It depends on what the core value is. In every business, every core value is different. But for me, as the owner or the leader, it's my job to explain to people the behaviours that I see which tell me that person is aligned to the core value that I'm talking about. And it's in the sharing of those stories, I saw this person do that, and that to me spoke to this value. And constantly sharing those stories. That's what brings it to life in our businesses. It's not the values themselves, it's the stories that we share. So in one of my businesses, we have a weekly roundup, a video that we send out, and there's a core value story at the end of every video. It's 30 seconds, but every week, everyone in the whole company is hearing about one core value story. And that really brings it to life. Yeah. And over 52 weeks, they get 52 examples of what that behaviour looks like.
That's amazing.
Cool. No worries, great questions. No problem. All good? I've got to say thank you. That was so cool. I just had so many great conversations with you. That was just wonderful. So thank you for engaging with us and being willing to share. So we had quite a few questions around how this model works, and I feel like most people have engaged in the exercise and have a basic idea of how this could work and what it looks like in their organisation. The next question is, once I have this map, then what do I do? And so I wanted to just go through recommendations around this. So there's two things that I think people often miss, and this is where I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm not looking to do things properly. I'm looking to get 80% of the benefit with 20% of the effort, and then move on to the next thing, because there's just too many things for me to perfect in my business. So the first thing is I already talked about is exit strategies. So having a really clear idea about a fair process for when someone is generating C-level performance of saying, this is the fault of our company. We've mishired you. We need to do something about that. And that involves you not being here anymore, but that doesn't have to be a terrible scene either. And so figuring out what that process looks like before we go around and kind of kick people out of our business, actually figuring out that process so that can be an ongoing process. And also for me in my companies, we talk about exit strategies on the way in. So to say, we're not expecting you to work here until you die, because it's the modern world. So we want to have a conversation now about what leaving this company looks like. And that has been very, very powerful for us. The second thing, we go from the C players, I want to go right up to the A players. This is the other area, is that if I know what an A player looks like, and I communicate to them that they're an A player, and I can explain to them, this is the productivity that I'm seeing that makes you an A player, and this is the core value behavior that I'm seeing that makes you an A player in this company. I can communicate that more widely around the organization so people can understand how to behave and what level of performance means that they have a job here for life if they want it. The second part of that is that for those people, I want to be looking at my retention strategies. So really putting conscious effort into, for our A players, how do we stop them from leaving and going somewhere else? Because the thing is, A players get pulled out of your business. You know, I want to pull your A players out of your business and put them in my business, right? We're all fighting for talent. And so thinking constructively about the ongoing processes by which we recognize and then reward A players. So for me, you know, a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about this coaching and mentoring, and they try and get that really right. I don't even go to that bit until I've got these two bits right. Because if I just get these two bits right, that's 80% of the value right there. But the final piece is that it is possible to turn some B players into A players. And there's two ways to do that. So if their behavior doesn't match the values, then what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to provide them with mentoring to say, these are the sorts of behaviors that we see in the organization. I was speaking to you about constantly sharing stories about what I as the leader see as just a simple everyday behavior that I've seen this week that matches our core values and why, and constantly sharing those stories for people. But then for people that are specifically low on the core values, being able to have a constructive conversation about that and give them examples of where I've not seen the behavior match and what that looks like and how that comes across to the team for them to understand, and also examples of behavior that does match, and then getting them to brainstorm what they're going to make changes of. The same process for coaching for productivity, but this is, for me, I find it's much easier to teach someone new skills than to teach them new fundamental values behaviors. And so here, I'm mentoring for behavior. If I don't see an immediate change, it's an exit strategy. And that's better for everyone. But I've given them an opportunity. Maybe for me, in this area, 1 person in 10 is what I would expect. But I want to give everyone the opportunity. Here though, if I've got a good coaching system, then I can usually get about 50% of people to really start to move up. That's what most people that are core values match. They don't want to leave. But I need to make it clear, and once again, I'm very, very strict with this in my companies. If I do not see a significant move in your productivity in 90 days, then I have to let you go. And so, you know, people find me to be a hard boss. Who likes that when they see that? Yeah? A players love to have a leader who's willing to say, you're a B player, I love you, we want you to come to the family barbecue, but not working here. We'll find you and we'll support you to find a job that's a better skills match for you. Because we love your values, but you just do not have the skill for the role that we've put you in. So this is, once again, one of the most important retention strategies is being willing to have a robust process around letting B players go. So for me, this is a very powerful tool that I use across all of my businesses. The other thing that I like about this system is that as my businesses grow, I need to bring on HR people. And when I've built my team on a system like this, then when I hand over to HR, then they can just use this system. And it's very, very simple. And if I've got the scorecards that I talked about, if those scorecards are already in place for everyone, then it's very, very easy for a process-driven HR person to emulate this system and keep it running without me. So I hope that gives you a few clues about this particular tool and how we use this in EO. And back to you, Gira.
Thank you. Cool. So, as you were saying, sometimes they refer to these people as the terrorists, because these are the people that work really hard, but aren't aligned with core values. And so, although the wheels are spinning, they're not spinning in the direction that you want them to be. And as I think one of the really fascinating things about what David just shared is the effort to return of focusing on A and C categories. And as David was saying, what we want to achieve is we want to achieve impact as quickly as possible rather than perfection. When we spend time trying to perfect things, that's when things fall over and we don't notice the next thing. And also as the wheels spin faster, so everybody lines up with what needs to be done. I wanted to just say a little bit about the Accelerator program itself, just to give you a little bit of context. This tool that we went through now, very briefly, is one of 32 tools across those 4 categories. So we spoke about people, strategy, execution, and cash. And the way that the Accelerator program works is that we have learning days 4 times a year to go through each of these different things for a full day. And then on a monthly basis, we work with a group of other people, other peers, smaller groups, 4 to 5 people at a time. And one of the key things, as I'm sure you'll know as entrepreneurs, is that when you're leading a team, there's not a lot of people who understand what's going on for you. There's not a lot of other people that you can go home and share why it didn't work or what the problem is, and nobody really wants to hear that today your challenge is that you're trying to work out little things like, should I increase the cost of what I'm selling things and lose some of my customers? Your friends don't want to know about that. When you're having dinner and chatting about those kind of details, maybe they're working, those kind of things that might consume you all day long, minutiae about the most important thing in your business is so far away from other people. And to be surrounded by a group of other people like this who understand why what those challenges are, these concerns around people. I think the sense of having a community of people around you that can house those and just not even solve your problem. But we don't try and solve each other's problems. We try and create a space where you feel like you're held and where you can share what's going on for long enough that you can solve the problem yourself. And that's really one of the core kind of values and ethos of how this process works. And I think that's really it. I think we wanted to just do a quick dive into one thing without sending you on a journey through all the 32 or all the different processes. We wanted to use a little bit of this time for the EO members that are here. If you want to have a chat about EO itself, the Entrepreneurs Organization, or the Entrepreneurs Organization's Accelerator program, which we've been sharing some of the tools from. There is a program like this in Bahrain. We have a graduate over here in the audience from the program. And there are a number of programs in lots of different cities. About 168 cities around the world have EO chapters. Something like 60, 70 of those have got accelerator programs, so you may well have a program very close to where you live. And we'd love to use the rest of the time that we have for the session to have a chat to you individually. Thank you very much for coming. We hope that you've been able to learn something and something that you can take away. Thank you very much.